OMG, we are live. And hello, everybody. We're going to wait for everyone to stream in. I was actually looking for your Twitter handle so that I could tweet about it with you, with your caption. And I'm like, where did it go? You were on Twitter so much. What happened?
They permanently banned me from Twitter.
Why?
I guess I was too controversial. I don't know. First of all, I think Tim's page got permanently suspended after we posted a picture with him and me with Ann Coulter and Milo Yiannopoulos, and then a little bit later we were both like doxxed and published on a California Antifa page because we were going to be speaking at a free speech rally, and people just started from Black Twitter and from like Antifa pages just started like raiding my Twitter. So it was really only a matter of time before it was taken down. I was constantly getting reported for just like every single little thing that I posted, and all of my stuff was already shadow banned so heavily anyway. I remember in the beginning when like Anne would share my tweets or something, I would get several thousand retweets and I would get at least a few hundred followers. And then as I kept working and doing journalism and doing reporting, and especially after like my expose with the FBI, like my Twitter was completely shadow banned, like into oblivion. And
First of all, a few things. Expose with the FBI, Ann Coulter, Milo. Explain all of it. Your last name is Coulter.
So, yeah, well, Ann's my aunt. I was adopted into the Coulter family when I was a baby, and Milo is a good friend, and we were having a birthday party celebration for Tim and myself, and because we were born a day apart from each other, so we celebrate birthdays together. And Milo's been a good friend to me, and subsequently a good friend to Tim. So we were just having dinner, and I posted a picture that basically with the caption 3 queens and a king, and within the time it took for us to leave the restaurant and get to the train station to get home, Tim was permanently banned on Twitter, and all of my pictures were labeled sensitive content.
Oh my God.
So it's funny. It's really funny too, because like I could share a GIF from The Office, like I shared a GIF of Michael Scott saying something funny, and it was covered with the potentially sensitive content. It was totally just like a blanket mark on all of my future posts. And then the FBI thing, many of you guys, if you have heard of Paul Miller, you are a very special niche of politogrammers and that kind of political sphere. You also probably know him as Gypsy Crusader, the guy who said mean things on the internet, basically. And I met Paul before Gypsy Crusader was a thing, back when the FBI was harassing him for basically suggesting that New Jersey, he was part of this armed protest movement on Facebook. There was like a Facebook group, and he said, like, there's all these places where these armed protests are getting really good outreach, and there's no violence erupting from these protests, so maybe we should have one in New Jersey. And the FBI showed up and harassed his family, and it was all caught on Ring camera. So I was able to work with Paul and get that exposed, because in the first place they like lied to his mom and were like, oh, we're the police. And then when she pressed and said, what department, all this other stuff, like, where are you local to? And he said, actually we're FBI. Paul is now facing charges, and hopefully he doesn't. They were saying he could get up to 30 years, and now they're saying he might get off, and he might do 18 months instead of 10 to 30 years. But we'll see what's going on. But that was the Paul Miller situation, and I wish him the best, and I hope. Huh?
Like, what is he being charged on specifically?
I think 3 gun counts in possession. I think he's facing gun charges because he had a prior felony conviction.
Oh,
So he wasn't technically allowed. But honestly, what it boils down to is he made videos that people found offensive, and he made it on the ADL hate list. So it was he really is a political prisoner for all intents and purposes. And I I hope I haven't really found a direct way to be able to reach out, but hopefully we can establish something, because I know there's a lot of like potential for fraud there, and I know that his family probably needs a lot of help too. But that's a whole other can of worms.
yeah. Well, it's nice of you to help him out, because it really sounds like he does not deserve to be in there. And then you exposing, I mean, you really just talked about it, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, he kind of went a little, like, he took it a step farther than I really would, and I don't necessarily endorse the videos, but I don't think he's a bad guy because of them. He, after the FBI had harassed him, he was getting targeted. They told him he couldn't train at his gym anymore. He lost his job. Like, he was this is something he had been doing most of his life. So this was a pretty big deal. And then they came after his family. And after that, he just kind of like jumped full swing into the extremist perspective and was making videos that, were shocking and quite, baiting. But the fact of the matter is, when it came down to it, Paul Miller is like a good guy. I shared an example of that on my Instagram, like for all the videos where he's like, N-word this and like F these people that, and talking about crazy stuff. He would basically go on Omegle, and he would make videos where he would confront different people and like painted up as the Joker. So like these are like very out there videos. But at one point, one of the videos, this like young girl comes on, and he's like, "You don't want to be on this website. This website's for creeps. You need to promise me that you're going to sign off, or I'm going to worry about this." Like, that's the real Paul Miller. That's the guy I know. That's the guy who, like, before everybody like attacked his family, and he like was pushed over the edge. And I feel like that was largely intentional, but what do I know?
That's like really sad. It's like,
yeah.
scary.
It's a lot for a person to go through. I mean, like, it's hard enough when you have like a huge following and you're able to like have security and stuff like that, but he's just like a guy. He was just a regular guy doing regular guy stuff, standing up for American freedoms, and before you know it, like, he had gotten into a fight with some BLM activists. Like, then the FBI came for him. Then his family was attacked, and then he lost his job, and now he's sitting in prison, and it's ridiculous and very heartbreaking, to say the least.
Yeah. How old is he? Do you know? I don't know.
I don't know offhand. He's still fairly young.
Yeah, that's really sad.
At least it's not 30 years. I'm very hopeful that he's not going to end up doing 30 years. But yeah, that's the FBI thing. The long story of what the FBI expose was. But if you look on my profile at National File, you can see the Ring video, and you can see Paul Miller before he became Gypsy Crusader. And like I said, I know that's only cool to like a very niche corner of Politigram internet, but it is definitely an interesting story. And it's a clear-cut example of how under attack free speech actually is in America, and who actually is manipulating people into not being able to have a voice.
Yeah. So you're banned from Twitter. Where else?
Yes. I'm not necessarily banned anywhere else right now. I should be more active on the alt tech sites. I will be, now that I'm actually getting a full night's sleep again. But I constantly catch bans on Facebook and Instagram. Just like the usual, like, this is like fact checked, or this is like hate speech or whatever. But it never is. It's just disagreeable.
Yeah, and it sounds like you also don't really care so much about spending time on a lot of these platforms anyway, because you've now you're living, you know, out in the boonies and you have a baby and a family. And so you're more focused on living life. What's
Right. Oh yeah, well, I mean that's what we're here to talk about, right? The birth of the baby. But yeah, being a mom has like refocused a lot of what I wanted to do, and I'm going to be primarily focusing on the journalism and reporting aspect, and not so much on the social media. But like they do kind of have to go hand in hand to a certain degree. I just don't want to be doing it to the extent that I used to.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So tell us about the hospital story. I already
Yeah.
knew
So
hospitals before this story, but then after hearing it, I'm like, okay, I was correct.
I just would like to like preemptively say that I don't want to tell this story in order to deter women from having children. Having children is the best thing ever, and I would relive this experience time and time again, to end up with my daughter. She's the coolest and she's perfect, and I love her so much. So it's totally worth it. And honestly, even the pain isn't bad enough so that I would say that I'm not excited to do it again. Um, but the fact of the matter is, people take advantage of women in these situations because not everybody is an investigative journalist, and not everybody would think to push when things don't seem right, so, or know even necessarily how to do so, especially when threats start to become involved. But basically, the way it happened was I went into labor at around 6 in the morning on a Thursday, and I drove about 2 hours away to the only birthing center in Connecticut, which had given me many red flags before, but I kind of chose to like ignore it a little bit because I just didn't want to have a hospital birth. I didn't want to have to comply with ridiculous COVID protocols. It was just like ridiculous to think that my husband and my doula would have to wear masks in a room that only the doctors would be in. At the very least, you can, test people. Everybody has to get their temperature taken when they come in. So if there was any risk, it would be pretty apparent. So it just seemed ridiculous to me. Plus, I didn't, when I got pregnant, it wasn't very clear which direction things were going to go in. Like, I didn't know if it was going to get worse or better. So I really wanted to plan to have an all natural birth without the need for any other medical intervention, not at a hospital where there was going to be ridiculous protocols. So I went to a place that was actually connected to a hospital. So, like, worst case scenario, the hospital is right across the street. Um, you're you're not really allowed to. They did, or they had their policy was they didn't check women into the birthing center until you're 5 centimeters dilated, or no, 6 centimeters. Which is the beginning of active labor, essentially, like 6 to 10, and 10 is usually where you are capable of giving birth to the child. So, for me, like, and for most women during their first pregnancy, um, labor takes a long time, and I was 3 centimeters until the third day at like 10 o'clock at night. So it
Whoa.
had been like 72 hours of labor,
Oh,
and or no, not quite 72 hours, a little bit less. And I went in
that
and
sounds painful.
they checked me, and I was at 5 centimeters, and they had mercy on me and didn't make me wait till 6 at the very least. So I do appreciate that. But by the time I was in the birthing center, labor was starting to get more intense. It was the contractions were getting closer together, and I was going back and forth between the tub and the bed. And at first, they offered me nitrous oxide to be able to help combat like the pain, because it's not necessarily a pain reliever, but it helps it so that you don't necessarily um, aren't as affected by it. It makes it easier to cope with, and it doesn't stay in your system long enough to really have an effect on the baby. So it's really good for that. And this is where things started to go downhill really fast, because after a few hours of that, the nurse, for whatever reason, decided that she was going to change the tubes. And only after she disassembled it and threw away the original tubes did she realize that they didn't have any more tubes. So they could no longer offer me the nitrous, which was instantly an issue. Almost instantly, like, the labor felt next to unbearable. And I don't want to say it's because the pain got worse, because I don't want to give the wrong impression. It didn't necessarily get worse, but when you have less of a break between contractions, it just feels so much more intense. And the nurse at one point, like, you could tell they're getting bored of this. They're getting bored of waiting for the baby to come. And she just sits next to me, and I'm just like, I was a very loud birther. I just, like, you got to yell it out sometimes. And she sits next to me, and she very condescendingly said something along the lines of, like, you know, none of us can just do this for you, so you're just going to have to deal with it. And I just, like, I wanted to swing at her, but I had to keep composure and not do anything wild. And, you know, I'm not known for doing wild things anyway. But after a few more hours of this, it was like 6 a.m. I had actively been in labor since 10, and I had been in labor since, you know, 3 days, for like a total exactly of 3 days, 6 in the morning Thursday, 6 in the morning Saturday. And I finally just said to my husband, like, would you fault me if I needed to tap out? Because none of us had slept, and I was just like, maybe I should just get this epidural so we can all take a nap, and then when I wake up, I'll be good to go. So that's what we did. We ran over to the hospital right across the street. They gave me the epidural, and the woman who was one of the nurses came over and hands me this button. Or before she hands me the button, she goes, "This is for relief." And I had already, like, everything from, like, my midsection all the way down was completely numb. Like, I could no longer even feel my feet. And so I did not need any more relief. But she insisted on pushing this button for me and handed it to me and goes, "You can push this every 10 minutes. I'm going, okay, like, that's nice. I don't need it. I probably won't need it. When I woke up, I started to feel a contraction a few hours later. And I was like, oh, this is what they were talking about. So I hit it one time for that one purpose. And then a few hours went by. We all woke up. They woke me up. I was fully dilated. 5 pushes later, 15 minutes, I had my daughter in my arms. It was beautiful. Like, I would 10 out of 10 recommend it. I wish I could have done it naturally, but the fact is I really wasn't in a position to do that at this point. And we were happy and healthy. And as long as you have a healthy pregnancy, like, whatever you need to do, as long as it's best for you and your baby, like, no one can really judge you for it. But as we're, like, packing up, Tim looks over, my husband looks over at the IV and realizes that the bag for the drip that they gave me was fentanyl. And no one had told me that they were giving me fentanyl. No one told me, like, they just, like, you know, 72 hours into labor, I'm signing forms to, like, this is for the epidural and this is for us to treat you. That's all they said. No one said anything about, like, P.S. the epidural comes with fentanyl and
wait, how do you know?
Could be your baby. Huh?
How did you know it was fentanyl?
Because it was labeled it on the IV.
So.
And because, like, just a little bit of research in, and I'm pulling my medical records from there to prove it, but that it is very commonly paired with an epidural.
And they're allowed to do this?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Especially, it's which horrifying because most people, I don't want to assume actually that most wouldn't, but I would take an educated guess and say that a lot of people wouldn't even really think to check that. And I don't know what encouraged him to check it. Maybe he just happened to look at it. Maybe he was, you know, we had all finally gotten a couple hours sleep for the first time in days. So that was great. But it was a little bit shocking, to say the least, to realize that I had been given access to fentanyl and I would have been able to click that button every 10 minutes for what had been the last 4 hours. Like, can you imagine if I had actually done that? That's a ridiculous amount. Yeah, it should be illegal. It should 100% be illegal. It's one of the only things that has an effect on your fetus, your baby. You know, I shouldn't even call it a fetus, but either way. So the baby was born with no problem. She's beautiful. I love her so much. Best baby ever. I know a lot of parents say that, but mine's actually the best. But I'm sitting in the room and the doctor, there's more to the story. Yeah, this, like, medical horror story. So we're holding the baby, we're talking about going home, and they're like, oh, by the way, with all the tests and stuff that we do, you guys are going to have to stay for 24 to 30 hours. And I'm just like, yeah, that's not the case. At the birthing center, they tell you can leave in 4 to 6 hours, and I never signed anything that said I would stay that long. And they were all insisting, no, um, you know, this is a hospital policy. This is our hospital policy. We have it in writing, and you can't disobey the hospital policy. At first, they were saying, if you leave, you have to leave the baby. And it was just like, no, that's kidnapping. I'm not leaving my child here. Especially not my newborn. Like, you're out of your mind. And basically, they kept threatening us. They said, okay, well, if you leave with your child, we're going to call the police and we're going to call Child Protective Services. And it was like, okay, well, give them a call right now and I'll talk to them about it. Like, let me see this policy. That was our response. Like, I was like, I'm not going to lose my cool. I'm not going to yell, because then they're going to be able to say that I'm an incompetent parent or that I'm out of my mind, and they would have reason to do all of these things and follow through with these threats. So instead I said, all right, let me see this policy. The first doctor that I said this to, or she may have been a nurse. I have a list of all of their names and what they did. But the nurse basically said, okay, so we'll call the cops and we'll call Child Protective Services, but I'm not allowed to show you the policy. And I was like, so you're threatening me with police action and with Child Protective Services, but you can't show me the policy. I call bullshit. I really need you to go get that policy printed out for me. And this happened. There was like 4 or 5 rounds of people coming into the room, like, are you sure you want to leave early? It's hospital policy, da 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 da. And finally, the head doctor came in with a head nurse, and I go, okay, so do you finally have this policy to show me? Several hours had gone by. um, you know, uh, 3 comped meals later, 2 comped meals later. P.S. During this time, my doula was not allowed back into the hospital because she was no longer needed, while nurses were walking around with their masks all the way down. And my husband was told if he didn't wear a mask from the people in the room, he was going to have to leave. Ridiculousness. But anyway, so the final doctor comes in. He's there with the nurse. And the nurse basically, or the doctor basically says, oh, I can't show you the policy because it doesn't exist. So I've had after a full 3 days of labor, an epidural that I didn't want, finding out that I had been given fentanyl and all of this other crazy shit, like being threatened to get the cops called on me, being threatened with Child Protective Services. This supposed policy doesn't exist. They don't have anything like that. They can't show me a policy. And instead, he comes in to try to explain to me all of the things that could possibly go wrong with newborns and why, as new parents, we should be invested in staying in the hospital. Now, mind you, if you understand what he's saying, and you're not just taking it at face value, they want money. They want you to stay as long as possible so they can bill your insurance as much as possible. That's another reason why they use something like fentanyl, because they can bill additional for that. They want you to take all of the things and do all of the things that are going to reap them the most financial gain.
And
That's
they're
the whole
missing
point
that.
of this whole story. I don't want to scare women from not having children. Children are the best thing ever, and I'm going to do this at least 4 or 5 more times. But I'm just saying, like, even, with the COVID protocols, like, that was ridiculous in and of itself, especially because the nurses were walking around with their masks all the way down. But literally threatening me, like, for a full day, essentially, saying that, like, within hours of becoming a parent, that you're going to get the police and you're going to get all of these people called on you, only to find out that that was a complete lie. And then having to smile politely and thank them for all that they've done for us, but we would like to leave as soon as possible. So that was just so ridiculous, because all I wanted to do is just yell at him for being so incompetent and just, like, take out all of this, like, bitterness out on them. But it was just like, nope, just get your baby, get out of here as soon as possible. And now I just want people to understand that, like, when doctors try to intimidate you, like, you have rights. You cannot just let people walk all over you. You cannot let people try to take your child away or do anything ridiculous like that. Because like my story proves, like very often these policies or these things that they're citing don't exist, and they're just trying to scare you. I was also told by this hospital that I would get a call from them to basically, explain what happened so that they can prevent any such thing from happening in the future or whatever. Never got a call. Nobody ever called me. So it's horrifying to think of it like, I know a lot of women probably wouldn't have pushed and would have just said, okay, I'll stay, and let them rack up more money from the insurance. They would have not noticed the fentanyl or not cared or taken whatever excuse. I'm sorry?
They because of COVID, they're still trying to fill up their beds. I think a lot of hospitals saw like a decline in just their patients. It's like I think the media was wrong when they said like the beds were overflowing last year. Maybe
they were. Oh, 100%. And also, well, the thing they tried to use New York as an example, but like 16 hospitals had, or maybe not 16, maybe I think that might not be right. Although it's somewhere in that range of hospitals had closed in the year prior to COVID even happening because of how poorly run their healthcare system is.
Crazy.
So like a lot of that, like, oh, look at all the tents and stuff like that. Like, no, that was not related.
It's nuts.
Yeah. So the long and the short of it, like, even like COVID makes it so much more of a nightmare, but like people really need to understand and take responsibility for protecting themselves from, evil people who just want to make money off of you, essentially.
Yeah. Well, my sister really wanted to do a home birth, and I know a lot of people always try, and they end up switching to like hospital birth because it's so difficult. Like, what are the other options that people can have other than like getting admitted to a hospital?
Well, I mean, home births are not necessarily less. There are plenty of successful home births. I think it's probably most of them that try to have home births are successful. Again, I don't know specific numbers or anything like that, but there are plenty of non-narcotic pain control stuff that you can do for a home birth. Other options are basically a birthing center or the hospital. In my case, I just happen to live in an area where literally there's one birthing center in the entire state, and it just turned out that it was not such a great birthing center, and they were so thrilled when I finally decided to tap out and go to the hospital. One of them literally went straight home. So it was just, ridiculous.
Oh my God.
I just, like I said, I am very much committed to having as many of my other pregnancies be natural as possible. I would very much like to be moved into my own home by the time I'm pregnant next, instead of renting, so that I can more comfortably have a home birth, and not necessarily have to rely on a birthing center. Because especially after having experienced that labor process, like I had to be in labor for basically 2.5 days in a hotel before I was admitted to the birthing center. And I would much rather go through that process in my own home rather than having to go to a hotel or having to do it at like a hospital or something.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. But congratulations, that's really you're home with the baby, and that's all that matters. By the way, do you feel like you want more fentanyl? Like, do you crave it?
No, definitely not. There was not enough for it to, I didn't take it enough, and I don't think there was necessarily enough, but like, the real concern would be effects to the newborn, because she's, she was so little, she has her entire immune system and her entire, like circulation system and her entire development was based off of what I was putting into her. So if like for 4 straight hours every 10 minutes I had been giving her fentanyl, that could have been a huge problem.
Yeah. Well,
Thankfully that wasn't the case. Thankfully I was passed out for most of that, just like sound asleep. That was a blessing at the time, especially. Like 3 days of labor really takes it out of you, I must say.
this is crazy. Like, so people know that fentanyl is being given to people in hospitals. They're
Yeah, and I mean, like pregnant women, like women who are about to give birth, and
so
like
basically,
I don't know. I would look into more like which what kind of cases that come in other than pregnancy that they just like give you fentanyl to be able to use as pain relief, because I know that that's very common, to be able to have like a pain relief button that you can hit when things are particularly bad. I know that that's fairly common in the hospitals for especially like not necessarily like the people who don't get admitted, but the people who are there more long term.
yeah. Wow, I didn't even know this, honestly. I thought morphine, I mean, I already thought morphine drips were pushing it, like fentanyl drips. That's very extreme, especially for a newborn to be consistently getting that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You can probably hear her in the background. I might have to go grab her in a second.
Oh yeah, we're here. We want to see.
Yeah.
We want to see the
Let
baby.
me see if I can get her to come. I'll be right back.
We're about to see Kimberly's baby, which is very exciting. Have we have had my niece on this live stream, but I don't think we've had like baby. I don't remember. Have we? No, never mind. But I just don't trust hospitals in general. I've always been very just like weird about things, and I know I don't want to say that everyone should also, but I think like, oh my gosh, oh my, so cute.
Say hello.
Hi. Whoa, she is so.
She's a little fussy right now. She probably just woke up from a nap. Yes, I know. We just wanted them to see your beautiful face. We just wanted them to see your.
Oh, she's so little.
So yeah, that's the baby.
She's so tiny. I'm like not. I haven't seen a tiny baby.
She's also she gained 45% of her birth weight, according to her last doctor's visit. So,
Nice. What's her name, by the way?
There you go. Aria.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. Does she look like anybody yet? Like you were?
Dude, she looks just like a little Tim. It's just his face on her body. It's like so funny. Okay, I'm gonna bring you back. I'll be right back.
All right. Yeah, I am baby crazy already. Very cute baby. And yeah, someone is asking any kids in my future. Hell yeah, definitely want kids in the future. Yeah, I don't know how people do it though, because it looks like really difficult. I grew up in a big family, 4 younger siblings, and I do not envy my mom. Definitely did not envy my mom growing up. It was a lot. It was a lot. So, but I really appreciate having siblings. It's a lot of fun to have.
All right, I had her situated with a bottle and everything. Now she's good.
Nice. So, you talk about wanting to have like 4 or 5 more of these.
Oh yeah, at least. I'll have as many as I can. Honestly, Tim and I have been like we're high school sweethearts, so we met when we were 15, and we keep saying we should have just gotten married at 18 and gotten not started on this a lot sooner. But here we are, and we'll see what we can manage. But I would love to have just like a family.
Yeah, maybe your marriage wouldn't have been as great as it is now. Like if you had just gone through with
it. No, it's totally true. Yeah, I totally agree with you. We, everything happened the way it should happen, but it's hard not to be like, especially now that we are so focused on having a big family.
Yeah. Nice. I really like that. Also, so okay, so would you like, are you able to put like a negative review on this hospital, by the way?
Yes, I definitely will. Tomorrow I have a follow-up with the birthing center, and I intend to record that interaction. And then subsequently the hospital's right across the street, so I'm going to go pick up my medical records, and I'm going to use that to do a full report about it, and that'll be published on the national file.
Nice.
And hopefully band.video. I'll try.
So the national file, who runs that? All right, can we see it? We're gonna read about it on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, the national file has a Twitter page. We're active on all social media. We have a really big presence on Gab, actually, and Parler too, I believe.
You're a writer with the national file now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't done any reporting in a little while with the pregnancy and everything, but I do mostly journalism and some reporting for them.
They should have a show.
They do. They're back to doing. They have like live weekly shows that they do with the head of the team, Tom Papper, and Patrick Howley is on the team, and I think he's still doing live streams with us. We produce good content. We write really good articles about real news, and yeah, I like to think we have an impact, and I think I've seen the impact that we've had in several ways.
Nice. That's gonna be exciting. Now that your baby's out, you can also do more video stuff probably.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, especially now she's at this the stage where she's at a healthy enough weight so that if she sleeps through the night, I don't have to wake her up to feed her. She can just sleep through the night, which is fantastic because that means instead of getting, when she's cluster feeding, they say there's like a growth spurt at like 2 weeks and then 2 months. And at the 2 week mark, she was cluster feeding. I felt like she was awake every half hour. And now I can sleep for like 5 or 6 hours at a time at night, which is amazing. And it has already done so much for my well-being and my ability to be able to like do stuff during the day rather than like take little cat naps in between like feeding her and taking care of the house and stuff like that.
Nice. Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
What happened to Milo? Where is Milo Yiannopoulos? I haven't heard or
I don't know if they're still doing it, but I know he was doing a show with Lauren Witzke for a little while. And I'm not sure what he's doing after that, honestly. I know he's like now converting from homosexuality to heterosexuality, so congratulations to him on that. But otherwise, I don't really know.
Is he really converting? He's really heterosexual now?
Yeah, he's trying. He's that's what he's saying. He's using Catholicism to convert.
Interesting. Okay. And so, okay, cool. So I mean, I didn't see him like, and maybe I'm just in like a bubble because I haven't been seeing news about anything lately, but
well, I mean, if you've been following Milo's career, he's been kind of hinting towards wanting to do this for like the last 10 years. He considers himself a Catholic, and in that he considers homosexuality to be a sin, and this is him like taking a step towards his faith and away from degeneracy that he has otherwise promoted. I went on the first podcast I did was a Christy Meyer podcast, and I brought up I was talking about like my disdain for Lady Maga and all of that other like woke crap that's trying to disguise itself as conservatism. And I quoted Milo. One of the things he said was that if he had known that his open flamboyancy would inspire things like Lady Maga, that he would have offed himself a long time ago. And I just like, while that's tongue in cheek and very Milo thing to say, like I totally see where he's coming from. He feels, especially because Lady Maga very clearly took a lot of like his talking points and stuff like that.
I didn't even. That's interesting. Lady Maga is such a funny name. It's clever.
Yeah, I just don't understand like what is inherently conservative about like putting a dress on and claiming to be a anti-woke tranny. Like there's nothing conservative about that. Like if you want to support the MAGA movement, like why do you need to put on a dress for it? That doesn't make any sense.
Oh, okay, because Lady Maga's got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's nothing conservative about it whatsoever, in my opinion. Yeah. And I mean, if you want to support the movement, that's fine, but there's nothing progressive about throwing on a dress and makeup to do it.
Yeah, I feel you.
It's just like degenerate and kind of disgusting.
So,
in my opinion.
Yeah. So, like, now that so I feel like maybe also, again, maybe I am like just being in a bubble, but it seems like kind of like the I feel like the political right wing kind of is very segmented now. There isn't really like, and it's probably because there's like a Democrat president, so the right wing isn't really a right wing. It's more just like a bunch of different groups.
I mean, that started to happen before Biden took office. Like there's just like there's a lot of, I mean, and I think that that's kind of happening across both parties. There's a lot of division between like the different subgroups of both the left and the right and the supposed center. Because then you got everything from like the farthest left to the farthest right, and then like everything in between, like on the right and the left side of those scales, like all of them have interpersonal conflicts and all of them have problems with each other. And you see it's like oh, I'm a leftist, not a Democrat, like I'm this but I'm not that, like I'm America first, I'm not a war hawk, like there's all of these like little subdivisions between it, which is why the two-party system doesn't really it kind of falls on its face in that regard. But also like I think that more boils down to like whether or not you think the integrity of the election was compromised or not in terms of like an actual voter base, because like I very much like with illegal immigrants, there's no way to really know like how many votes to hear or to who. When you had such a compromised system, you never know how many people are in an area, how many illegal votes, how many people voted again. But I mean, we're starting to see that in little bits and pieces as far as audits go. So that'll be interesting. But like as far as like, the division in the right or the division in the life, or like whoever is in charge publicly, like all of these things kind of exist on their own plane. Like all of these things are kind of ongoing no matter what is going on the main public stage.
Yeah.
I.e. like who's president or the election or anything else going on.
Yeah, I hear that. Okay, so just one more question before we say goodbye.
Yeah.
Just the question in the title, do you feel like hospitals can be trusted in general? Or what should, like, I mean, not just even for pregnancy, but other things, going into like my grandparents had these experiences too recently where they went to the hospital for totally unrelated problem. Either like one of them got almost drowned in in water, and like he came into the hospital with water in his lungs, and they admitted him as a COVID patient, or like another one had a stroke, they admitted him as a COVID patient, like all these unrelated things.
Right. Well, the hospitals have been getting more money for COVID patients and COVID deaths. There have been like so many deaths caused just by unnecessary intubations, and I guess the answer to your question is no. Like, even not in the midst of COVID, do I trust hospitals? But especially during COVID, like they have um the only motive they have, or at least seemingly, is to make a profit, and they will facilitate whatever treatment or whatever diagnosis will get them more of a profit. I was a little terrified that they were going to fake a COVID test for me. Thankfully, they did like a little nose swab, and I came back negative. But I don't know. I wouldn't trust hospitals. I don't trust hospitals. And that's why I encourage people, when you're there, to ask as many questions as possible, to insist on your right to be either agree to disagree to medical treatments or holding times or whatever. Make sure you ask to read about absolutely everything. Make sure you do your own research on absolutely everything. Ask as many questions as possible. Like, really take a hold over your medical process, because even if you're not an expert, it's not that hard to just pick up your phone and go on Google and look it up. It might be tedious, and medical paperwork, very much like legalese, is difficult to read in many instances, but it's worth it. There's also several like free nurse hotlines, so if you really wanted to like get into it, you can try to call them and ask questions about certain procedures. But like I said, I would just look it up. I know people say that like WebMD is your worst nightmare, but when it comes to whether or not they're trying to profit off of you or trying to help you, I would just take as much responsibility over learning about that kind of stuff as possible. So like, let's say, you come in with like appendicitis, like look into all the treatments, look into like all the medicines, make sure you ask them what they're giving you, make sure you ask them like what the recovery time is going to be, and like all the different, like, just make sure you brush up as much as possible to have as much of a grasp over what's going on, so that if something comes up that like gives you a bad feeling or gives you a red flag, you have the confidence in your knowledge to be able to speak up and say something about it, and be able to say, no, I don't want to do that, or yes, I want to do this, or can we do this instead?
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna keep that in mind. Hopefully I don't need to go to the hospital anytime soon.
Yeah, I pray no one watching this has to go to the hospital anytime soon. It's not fun. And like I said, I'm gonna reiterate again, like, please don't take my story and be too scared to have kids. Kids are the best. I love my daughter. I can't wait to have more kids. And it did not deter me from wanting to have kids. It just made me more aware of like how like I need to prepare to be able to have a home birth, basically.
Yeah, I feel you. Okay. So, any questions from the audience before we let Kimberly get back to her little angel?
Mm-hmm.
That is, oh my gosh, look at this. Someone is saying that there's a Google alert under the video warning about what? Oh man. All right. So
Really?
and we're gonna let Kimberly go. And thank you so much for joining us. And I know that you have some new things that you're working on. Where can we find you? Is this is your Instagram account?
Yes, Coulter Culture is where you can find me on most every platform. All of my links are available on the link tree in my Instagram bio, so I'm just going to direct you to there. You'll be able to find my newsletter. You'll be able to see where you can find my articles, my videos, and all of my other content. And future content will be published and posted there. Instagram at Coulter Culture.
Okay, so everyone follow her on Instagram. If someone wants to ask her your question, because we're about to leave.
Yep,
But
ask me the question so I can run back to my daughter. I hear she's being very fussy.
But either way, you can reach out to Kim directly on Instagram, or if she doesn't answer, comment.
Yeah, I respond to all my direct messages. So go if you need to ask.
Okay. The question is this: true or false? Love is a battlefield.
False.
Okay, false. And she's going to explain that further on her Instagram story.
There we go.
See you all later. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and see you all in the next video.